A lot of what Michael just said was music to my ears, you know. I mean, I also oppose laws that reduce freedom of speech. I have opposed on the record the religious vilification laws in Victoria. You know, I have been part of the lobbying to get rid of those laws. And when I hear Michael get up here and say, look, I support liberalism and I support freedom of speech, fantastic. And Michael, of course, has freedom of speech. Of course, from my point of view, he gets to put his view to you. He gets to tell you, why he believes in God, why you should believe in God. I'm not here to suppress his freedom of speech. I'm not here to say that he's a person who cannot operate within our society and be listened to. You may decide after a while you don't want to listen to him because you think he's gone off on the wrong track, and you have that prerogative, of course. But he gets to have freedom of speech like everybody else. And absolutely nothing that I put in my opening would have suggested otherwise. And there's nothing about this topic, as I've explained it to you, that suggests otherwise. The topic that I am putting to you is that if you have left God behind in your own life, you do not believe in this, this being, this metaphysical being, or this, mythological agent, then you have every reason to have taken that view. But if you do hang on to belief in that being, you have every reason to say, hang on, can I justify this? Could I justify this, to a rational, well-informed outsider? And if I couldn't, can I really go and justify it to myself? That was what I put to you. And Michael has not addressed that at all. He has not put even one reason why you could justify that position either to yourself or to, the rational, well-informed outsider that we were talking about. I said there's a whole lot of arguments that get used. I couldn't go through them all in 15 minutes. I went through a couple of them. Michael had every opportunity to say, no, I don't like the ontological argument. I don't like the cosmological argument. I rely on the moral argument, or I rely on the transcendental argument. Did he do that? He can't really complain that I didn't, in my 15 minutes, steal his thunder and go through every single argument just in case. The onus was on him to come along in his rebuttal and to tell us, which of these arguments he does actually rely upon. He hasn't told you that at all. And I'm sorry, folks. Look, it's true that I was actually Vice President of the Evangelical Union, as we called it at my campus. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon your point of view, I decided I could no longer justify this stuff. I could no longer make this stuff add up. At that very time that I was in that position, towards the end of my tenure, I finally decided, no, I just can't make this stuff add up anymore. What I say to you is, look, there was hope for me then. I've worked out okay. And there's hope for you as well. You can't justify the position to a rational outsider who doesn't start with that position, and so you cannot, in good conscience, as an intellectually honest person, hang on to it yourself. And Michael had his 15 minutes to tell you why he should, despite what I'd said. He said absolutely nothing to ease those doubts that I think many of you probably had even before we started here today, because I know a lot of Christians do have doubts, and nothing to ease the doubts that I may have put in your mind if you didn't turn up with them in the first place. And there are even more reasons to doubt. I mean, I hammered the fact that the positive arguments that are put in favour of the Christian God don't hold water. They have a terrible track record. But there are other things, Christians are on the defensive trying to get those arguments to look like they might work, but they're even more on the defensive when they try to explain things like, if this being does exist and it is so powerful, surely it has the power to do something about all the suffering in the world. Not that it just is suffering, there's so bloody much of it. It has the power to do something about that. And it's supposed to be a benevolent, all-good being. It has every motivation to do something about that. And please take this suffering seriously. We can talk about suffering, but, go to any children's hospital or whatever. God has the power to do something about that if he exists, and he has every motivation to do something about that, and yet it's there. Over hundreds and hundreds of years, Christian thinkers have been trying to explain that away, and they have failed. Just as their positive arguments fail, they have never been able to put up anything to ease the doubts about that. And the sheer hiddenness of God. This being is so important. This being is the all-powerful creator of the universe. You would think of being so important in the scheme of things, metaphysically, would just be apparent to us all. It would just be an overwhelming presence. I'm here to tell you that it's not. Some Christians will claim that they have what they call a sensus divinitatis. You know, the sixth sense that they have, whereby they can see God. They see a waterfall, a beautiful waterfall, and they see God in the waterfall. Well, look, I see a beautiful waterfall, and what do I see? I see a beautiful waterfall, right? I don't have that sensus divinitatis. I don't see something supernatural. I see a beautiful natural thing, and that's all you see as well. You know, God does not overwhelm us in that way. He's not an overwhelming presence, yet he has every motivation to be so. He is supposed to love us. He is supposed to want to have a personal relationship with us. He has every reason to use his vast power to be apparent to us in our lives. He steadily fails to do that because there are people like me who do not have the sensus divinitatis. We don't see God in the beautiful waterfall or the mountains or whatever. We see natural beauty. And I put it to you that you don't really see that either. You may have had certain emotional experiences, but you do not have God as that sort of overwhelming presence. And yet, you know, God has every power and every reason to be present in your life in that clear-cut way. Michael talked about the historical evils of the Christian church. You know, there has been corruption, there has been oppression, there has been hypocrisy. I mean, that's pretty obvious if you study the history of the church. The church, though, claims to have been founded by God. You know, it's not just a human institution, or it shouldn't be. But the evidence is that it is actually an all-too-human institution. And the Bible itself, which the Christian Union says on its website is the inerrant word of God, it at very least is wide open to interpretation, because look at the numerous interpretations just of a doctrine like the sacrificial atonement. Yeah, it's been interpreted in maybe half a dozen ways, maybe more over the centuries. Nobody really knows what it means. This is not, I submit to you, the product of an all-powerful, all-knowing divine being. The Bible is an all-too-human book. The church is an all-too-human creation. Christianity itself is, as you know, we used to say, man-made. I prefer, because I think that sounds a bit sexist, I prefer to say Christianity has all the hallmarks of being a human construction, and so does the Bible, so does the church, so does each individual church. They have all the hallmarks of being purely human constructions. When they try to speak with some special moral authority, as if they got that from God, you have every reason to be sceptical. When they act as if they have access to some special kind of knowledge, a special supernatural kind of knowledge that the rest of us do not have access to, you have every reason to be sceptical. You know, even if you start out by accepting these propositions, you cannot justify those propositions to someone who does not already accept them. That may have made sense. Was that the warning or 2 minutes? If you start out in modern times with a modern worldview without already buying into this, you will see there is no reason to believe in the existence of this being. There is no reason to think that Christianity is anything other than a human construction. And there is every reason to think that the concept of God is a human construction and that Christianity itself is a human construction. That doesn't mean that the adherents of Christianity are unable to say what they like in the marketplace ideas. Of course they can. Of course I'm not denying Michael that political right or that social opportunity. He can say that, but the question is, should you believe him? I'm saying you have every reason in the world to doubt him, and there's no reason at all, no reason whatsoever, that he's given you to put away those doubts. It is time for you to put, the idea of God behind. Thank you.